Hello, Internet. Welcome back to that Silverline Show on Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim TK, joined as always by Jose Fuentes.
Hello, everybody.
David Rios.
Hello.
And Ron Fortier.
Howdy, y'all.
And tonight we're talking about how to write a comic arc. So, this is going to be, we've talked a little bit in the past about, writing issues versus writing trades, all that stuff, and the thought process can do it either one. This is going to be talking about if you were to plan out a 6 or 4 issue arc, typically what you'd end up getting in an event or a special feature that would originally we would turn into a trade, but now it feels like everything is written for trade anyway. And different ways you could go out writing an arc, whether that is a single event or if you have a ongoing backdrop of drama. I think classic X-Men, where you always have the X-Men versus Magneto happening in the background, but you might have a monster of the week or bad guy of the week or an event of the month that gets dropped in for each issue while the arc happens over the course of the storyline. And of course, before we get into all that, I do have to let you know that if you want to get your hands on some sweet Silverline comics and help us recoup our events after the Diamond fiasco, you can head on over to Silverline Comics crowdfunder and place an order for some back issues. And it's not just back issues, there's other things you can order from there as well. Special variant covers, exclusive covers, things like that you can pick up from that crowdfunder. And that goes to help a small comics business keep on providing comics to your door.
Great comics to your door.
Exactly. Okay. So, of course, I'm sure this will probably be another episode where Ron and I can speak at length about, whatever and ramble on about our various writings. But thanks, CC, of course, fellow Silverliner and Tuesday Show alum. And get your stuff. Great. So I'm sure this will be another episode where
notes.
Yeah, where Ron and I can just talk at length about this without end. But first I want to get your guys' opinions. Jose and David. When it comes to a favorite storyline you have, like an arc, not just like a single issue, but something or like the first time you realize that like this is being written as an arc and it like actually like felt like it landed. I know, like some of the classic times, like first examples I've heard people talk about when they realized that comics were more than just a Monster of the Week format was when you got to like Days of Future Past or Crisis of Infinite Earths, things like that. But what was your guys' like first experience with an arc, and what are some of your standouts or favorites with those?
I think my first experience, like realizing that there's story arcs in comics, right? Was War of the Gods from DC Comics. And that was pretty much its own book, but it kind of would tie into a couple of the other books that were out and everything. But I realized that I was like, oh, so there are stories. There are stories that continue on. It's not just not episodic. That was for DC, and then for me, for Marvel, my favorite storyline, my favorite story arc is Age of Apocalypse.
Yeah,
because who doesn't love apocalyptic anything?
Oh yeah. For me, that was Age of Apocalypse, or that sort of era as well. When I got to, like I said, my first experience with comics and like what we fell in love with this introducing Cable and X-Force, and that came out of Apocalypse and all that. And so that was one of my moments of like, oh, I now need to follow this month to month.
Right.
Or I need to force my dad to go pick this up for me, but yeah.
But yeah, I think the first story arc I ever actually bought, like I think Crisis came out. I don't know the exact year, but I feel that it was already in the midst when I first started collecting comics.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So I was like, oh, what is this? Like, who are all these characters? And then I started finding, like I said, the DC who's who, and so I started reading about everybody, every character in the DC universe. Then everything kind of started falling into place and clicking. It's like, oh, I know who that is from blah 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 blah. So yeah.
Absolutely.
I'd have to say probably my first one that I really thoroughly enjoyed was the story arc, and it's kind of an expanded. It's actually more story arcs, but I'd have to say the Burn Run on X-Men.
Mm.
There was a lot of different arcs, but getting into Hellfire Club and all that stuff. If I had to narrow it down, um, but again, like Jose mentioned, the Age of Apocalypse was fantastic because it took you out of what you were used to and what the norm was, and you got different takes. Oh, what's this? Magneto and Rogue? Ah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what happened to Wolverine's arm, his hand? All that stuff. So I like that. Completely for 3 months or however, just disconnecting and living a completely different life. And that's kind of the basis that we have for. If you think about it, it's kind of the basis that we have for the absolute universe.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
completely stepping away from what you're used to and building on that. So yeah, I'd
Yeah,
have
and
to
that's
probably say that. Go ahead.
Let's say Absolute Universe also right now is doing a very good job of like having very clear demonstration of using well-defined arcs where every 6 issues is a complete storyline where we have a beginning where we introduce a new bad or whatever, we have rise in action, climax in issue 4 or 5, and then the last issue settles it, and then you might use the last 2 panels to introduce something that will come up in the next 6-issue arc. Or it's a very clear tight in comedy of a type 5 where you have to do everything you can in 5 minutes, so you want to stay focused, stay on theme. Well, it's up in comics, it's more like a tight 6 where if you are writing for trade or writing for tight 6, everything in those 6 issues is going to be focused on this one event or this one conflict that needs to be resolved. Whereas you might get something that like Crisis where it's happening over a long period of time, so you might have these backdrops that are like, yes, this is something that has happened or is happening, but we are introducing this villain this month that gets resolved in this 22 pages, and then we introduce this alternate Superman that gets handled in this 22 issues or this 2-issue thing, but it's all part of this larger arc, but it's not necessarily as tightly focused.
Well, with the absolute, what I was a little surprised because I expected going into it, obviously, having a draw towards the Batman storyline, but
Yeah.
When I started reading, I was expecting that I would probably be more interested in the Wonder Woman part of it, but I actually found myself being more drawn into the Superman storyline than the Wonder Woman. But I don't know. It's just different takes and everything. It took a lot of leeway with it, so it's interesting, and it's like I said, it all kind of falls back to the original Age of Apocalypse type idea of just stepping away from the norm. So
I might have to actually start reading Absolute Batman because I found out the next issue or whatever is Clayface. They introduced Clayface. And Clayface is my favorite Batman character.
I'd say if you
go ahead.
I'd say if you're not following, like, even if you're like a person who has not followed comics from the big 2 at any time recently, the Absolute series, I would say, is a must read. Just the way it redefines everything, but still keeps it centered on like themes of heroism and hope, in the face of like. Well, the themes are even more present because it's heroism and hope in the face of even more unscrutable evil. Where like,
okay, that's fair.
Yeah, especially
Again, I've not read it, so
yeah, especially Superman. Superman's very good. And then on the Marvel side of things, X-Men. I follow it because of the it's my Mutant Boys. That's about it. It's not the best it's been, but it's not the worst. We do get Turtleneck Magneto though, which is one of his best looks, I will say. But Chip Zdarsky's run on Captain America and Armageddon. This is some of the best that Captain America and Avengers has felt in a while. Just in terms of cohesive storytelling, stakes are set at a way that doesn't feel absolutely insane, but is still present. Motivations are happening, and there's depth to the characters, and the conflicts are just cool to watch. Yeah. Speaking of arcs, though, then you get the really interesting thing where you have arcs on arcs, where this is where the hand of editorial in a bigger institution will come into play, and where sometimes things can get very lost and very muddy. I will say this is done to Marvel's detriment for a long time, where each year they'll say, okay, we need to have 2 big events, one in summer, one in winter.
Right.
And so every title will need to build up to that in some way. And, something that did this very well was Secret Wars with Hickman's Avengers and the Illuminati series and all that. Where you will build arcs in your long-running series that build into an event series or event arc that will be done as its own separate 8-issue thing, and then it comes back into the main timeline or whatever. And then after Secret Wars, they kind of did that where everything was, you got event fatigue where you needed to buy 50 books each month just to know what was happening.
That's War of the Realms from Marvel.
Yeah. Yes. But if you do that well, then you might need, you just need to buy 2 core series and the event title, and you're good. Everything else is just flavor on top. That's how you get Secret Wars and like House of M. If you're reading Uncanny X-Men and then House of M, like you're kind of set. And then you can pick up the side stuff if you wanted some cool side things that are happening. Like this is neat, but not at all required.
Right.
Yeah.
Wait, what is that again? Post that?
This is House of M, Incredible Hulk.
Oh.
Yeah.
What I find though is a lot of these summer ones, they just get bloated and Marvel really bloated it with me with the whole Venom.
And
they did
separation.
They just did the King in Black stuff fairly recently, right?
Yeah.
But it's like you had like the symbiote, like the War of the Symbiotes and the King in Black. It's just like they just had
something like that.
It's just like, this multi thing across all their titles was symbiotes, and then the next one was symbiotes, and it's just it's tough when you're you want to sometimes try to just stick to the main one, but sometimes some of these spin-offs are more interesting, when you look at some of the stuff like the Blood, was it the Blood series that happened like 2 years ago?
Blood Hunt, yeah. Blood Hunt into X Hunt, or X Manhunt. Imperium fell apart. Imperium was interesting because it was very well constructed. It's very it avoids a lot of the pitfalls, but the problem was that it just, when Marvel for so long recently has been like, we're not really touching space stuff for a while. We've had Future Foundation and we did some other stuff, and we're going to let space ride. Then you hard launch back into space and don't really market it, and also that's not where your brand has been doing really well. But that gets into the business side of comics. But you should could use some better market analysis. But
sorry, it's just I like when more than the multi crossover, all Marvel basically. Let's put it this way: the push to get people into the other comic lines that they're not in runs. not as big of a fan of those generally. I like
Yeah.
things. One of them that I really liked. I don't normally do a lot with Daredevil, but I really enjoyed the Fall from Grace arc with McGinnis.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Very nice, nicely well done. And then some of the arcs that are the standalone. The I've, the when they redid the origin and it was the John Romita Jr. They were the trade books. There's 5 trade books.
Yeah.
Where it's like the first issue or whatever, he was in the yellow suit, and that was very well done. Captain America
Hmm.
had an arc. Was it the Star Spangled? It was another prestige format miniseries, um, back from like the 90s. Very, very well done. Um, so I'm more of a fan of either something that's a nice, well-written miniseries,
Yeah.
or an arc inside, like the Fall from Grace when it's just in the middle of the books. Fantastic.
Yeah.
And same
I mean,
thing with a lot of the McFarlane Hulks. That Hulk run had some really cool storylines. And it even followed
mhm.
past. You had like the Dale Keown books and stuff like that worked pretty well too.
Yeah. So kind of like kind of pull it back into topic here. Kind of like whatever feedback here, and also what you can see with just consumer sentiment when what seems to be selling is mostly completed trades or minis, which is, I don't know if movies had affected this, but we kind of have stepped away from the sorry, people were being loud in the background. The stepping away from the semi-frequent pulp. In comics, it's usually like a monthly pulp, which you still get like the Monster of the Weekend that does well in the floppies, but people are liking the thing where it's built for the trade, or buy it as the trade, which maybe people getting into comics from movies has affected that, but where they will like the complete experience. But it gets to a point where, and it's not to say that your Monster of the Month isn't good, like it still sells well, but you have the weird things like the Imperial side effect storylines or some of the stuff at DC where it gets canceled for because it doesn't sell because it's not as cohesive, where it is built where but I didn't as an example recently, Age of Revelation, which was supposed to be a sequel series to Age of Apocalypse, had you buying 9 different books that were all not cohesive, all like bounced off of each other to get the full thing. And then if you got the trades, it wasn't the complete beginning, middle, and end of the storyline. And so you got to this point where like, this is failing in both avenues. So if I'm writing the 6-issue arc and I'm watching it to means the same thing that we talked about this before writing, is that everything should serve the story, right? So if we're thinking about an arc, we have to think about it almost like episodic television, where you can do it like the Winchester style, where you have the ongoing season where, okay, first season it's the Winchester brothers need to find their dad. That's the ongoing thing in the backdrop. We can have that set as like issue 1 the start of the year, we set that up. Issue 12 at the end of the year, we wrap that up. But each issue we have a different thing along the way, and that's for a long time what Capes did for a while. Or you can do something that is more like prestige television or whatever, where it is that hyper focused of each issue directly leads into the beginning of the next one. And that's typically more where you get your event arcs or your event storyline.
Your
And
serialized
serialized
story.
Yeah. And I think you can, if you're writing, as an image creator, you have that choice of, do I want my comic to be one where each issue is its own complete story with the big bad in the background that will pop up occasionally or whatever, because I don't know if I will be able to make an issue every month or whatever. But I want every time I come to a show, I want someone to pick up an issue that still tells a story. But if they were to collect all 6 over the course of however many years, 6 years, or whatever it takes me to make that, they'd get the storyline of Adam beating Skeletor by the end of it. But each issue we set up with Skeletor dropping some new big bad on your hero. They deal with that in the issue, but they don't actually beat the big bad in that issue. Very similar to how you might do a campaign in D&D. Whereas in your serial storyline, where I'm just going to crank this out and try to knock this out as fast as I can, you don't need to. Just typically, it's going to be harder for someone to remember the elements of a serialized storyline if you're taking more than a year or more than a couple hour long to pull that forward. And so that's kind of the thought process you need to have at the beginning is, am I writing this for a tight 6 serialized storyline where I can maybe I just write this as a trade paperback. Maybe I just write this as a trade and then we break it up as floppies. That's kind of what we do with Silverline to an extent, or at least with some of our storylines. That's what I've done, where Dracula, Soul Ascendant, Wolf Hunter is written for trade but broken up into floppies. Whereas we'll have other storylines that are written for floppy, where it is not quite Monster of the Week, but it's that same idea of I think Cat and Mouse does this as well, where we have the big bad set up, but it's kind of, if you pick up this issue, it's what happens there. Same with former Silverline alumni as well, Aaron Humphreys. His I can't remember the name of his book now, but it's done that same way as well, where it's
the one that's finished or the one he's still working on.
The one he's still working on.
Not
yes, yeah. I just ran into him earlier this year at the Salem Comic-Con. But yeah, it's that same idea where it's episodic, but you have this ongoing thing happening in the background that influences the events of the episode.
Okay. What do you think, Tim, is the ideal, the sweet spot of amount of issues for a story arc? It's now take into consideration that we're doing just running an ongoing series for a comic, right?
Uh-huh.
So ongoing series for whatever Silverline book or just in any book in general that you're working on. What is the sweet spot for how many issues a story arc should run? You know what I mean? Not counting the underlying leading to the big, seasonal arc.
Yeah, I'd say between 3 and 6. If you're just it needs to be somewhere where it's divisible by the amount of months in the year, right? If you're writing for a monthly release, or because that's now also the standard. If you're converting that to making your own trades, your arc should be able to fit into one trade.
Okay.
If you just write 2 issues, that's not really an arc. That's more of an event or a feature.
Right.
It's technically in comics would be a feature, TV should be an event, but in comics that'd be a feature. If you're writing more than that, then you are essentially not really doing a arc in the traditional sense, more as you are doing a long form story that will probably be I forgot the term for it when it's done as floppy, but essentially that'll be turned into an omnibus or into a trade or into a graphic novel, where that is a long form series that's just turned, or long form book that's just released as floppies. And so because if you get a I guess actually a good example of this would be One World Under Doom, because that I'm finishing that now, where it is I think it's 9 issues is it's like a 9-issue miniseries, which at this point, with how fast Marvel is canceling and renewing books, that's just a full-length series at this point.
Okay.
But that is essentially that's just a graphic novel released as floppies.
So, what is gonna, in the same vein as my last question, right? What is the minimum, or because you're talking about we're talking about miniseries, story arcs and whatnot. Yeah. Then you have maxi series, right? Maxi storylines, right? What's the amount of issues in that? Like, what's the minimum to make a max? I always thought it was like 10 or 12.
I feel
right?
like we should, yeah. I feel like it should be 10 or 12. Because at this point where if you're breaking up your story into acts, which if you have not taken it, if you're writing an arc, you don't necessarily need to write everything all out at once, but you should at least do your beats. Right? You need to break it out in some point where issue 1 is this, issue 2 is this, issue 3 is this. Your simple statements, but something where you can break it up into long form acts where, if you're doing a maxi series, you're probably gonna be looking at 10, 12 issues minimum, probably more.
Okay. That's kind of what I thought, right? That's the vibe I got was like, for a maxi, you know what I mean? Yeah, 10 or 12. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's where you get something like Tokyo Ghost. So good. But like issues 1 and 2 are very clearly the first act, and then you get, all the second act, and then issues 9 and 10 are the third act.
Right.
Technically, issue 9 is more the third act, and issue 10 is a denouement, but no one thinks in 4 acts or 5 acts anymore. But
well, 10's like 10. If it were a movie or whatever, right? 10's considered is basically the epilogue, isn't it?
pretty much, yeah. It's the denouement. So everything.
8 and 9 would be the third act.
Yeah, and 8 and 9 would be more the third act. In modern storytelling, 8 would be a climax, which is like the turning point from second act into the third act, and then 9 and 10 would be the true third act. But if you want to go into like more classical thinking of storytelling, if you want to get really nuanced in how you think about how you craft stories, issue 9 is the third act, and it's the settling, and then issue 10 is the denouement, where everything now falls into place, where nothing really needs to settle, no resolution needs to happen. This is just what has happened as a result of the events of the book.
I told you I'm taking notes. Give me a moment. You're faster.
But then you also get this weird thing where I don't know if anyone else gets this, but if you get a floppy, or if you pick up a floppy and it's kind of a nothing happens book, like this happened to me with Lobo recently, like issue 2 and 3 of Lobo, where it's kind of like, this is a nothing happens book.
Are you talking about the individual issue or the book in general?
The issue, like the individual issue.
Okay.
You kind of get like this almost sense of like disappointment, like, all right, I can, but like if you were to put that in terms of a trade, or like, and when I'm thinking about what's happening with Loeb right now, what Scotty Young is doing, it would make sense in the full 6 issues. Like this is just like a breathing moment and then a reset. Like this makes sense in terms of a 6-issue arc. However, in the moment, it feels a little weird that nothing's happened at the moment. Where this is where you get into like the nature of the beast, and that comics from the big publishers take a month to come out. Comics from us as independent creators, it's happening when it's happening, man. So you almost need to, like in our case, like I try to treat our things with some level of episodic nature, where there is definitely conflict or something happening or some sort of spectacle in the book. As you know, I'm working with Rob, who is in our chat, on Dracula, and I need to have it. Each issue doesn't need to end in a bow, right? It needs to set up the next one, but something needs to happen. A change needs to occur. I'm not necessarily taking the moment to have something breathe in the same way that I would if I could maybe put out a book on, or like a 12-page mini comic on my website every week. Because if I was doing that, I'd feel much more comfortable like having kind of a breather episode, because I know that that's going to help reset people's pacing for when you come back to the next week.
Right.
Yeah. And so
you want to hook your next issue, right? You want
to hook your next issue, and so you want to have people feel like this is a great $5 I spent. I got a lot out of this book.
Sorry. Well, one of the things it's surprising, and you mentioned, the Lobo books, and this is not something that you would expect normally in this space.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at formulas, yes, a lot of the big publishers, DC and them, they want to do trades, and so they tailor things by the trades, like you've been talking about. But they typically want to do 1 to 2 pretty hard hitting trades.
Yeah.
So issues 1 through 6 or 1 through 12. Typically, you see it. A lot of them they either do 5 or 6. But then once they get people and they get the action going, then they put in their, they taper the story down and do that. It's very surprising that they would do it on the first arc, and particularly in like the second book.
Yeah.
Now, and this also part to go as you're planning is, you know that when you hit readers like that you get points where maybe you need to bring the reader back home, so you'll go through and do an issue, one, maybe 2 issues that maybe slightly off topic. So and so the hero, after being spending the last 12 issues hitting the front lines, goes home, a homecoming type thing where the action's kind of dies down a little bit. Maybe you have personal story that goes on with the family and all that stuff, but going through and still keeping this method of we're still doing the next trade. You have to then counterbalance by doing a 4 or 5 issue or mini arc within that trade, so that you're not saying, well, I'm going to do another 6 issue, so we're going to completely ignore the 5th, the 7th book, and we'll start on 8. So you get a lot of them that will go and tailor it, so they're still keeping that issue, 6, 12, issue 18, but we know that issue 13, maybe 14 are going to be, slower pace, completely separate arc, and then we'll go through and do, 15 through 18 will be an expanded mini arc, and that may build to a next powerful. So that's a lot of your how you're structuring and you're building that, if you're still trying to maintain within the bundled trades. So
Yeah. Nice thing too, also, since we are independent creators, we have the ability to say, like, okay, with the stream writing, I only really need to give 3 pages of breathing space per thing happening, right? So I can totally do this as like 22 pages once a year, once every 2 years, because I don't need to like have a whole lot of downtime where the reader is not going to be on the edge of their seat or not actively engaged, pulling into the next whatever. And they'll have a full, emotional experience. They'll have a full catharsis through these 22 pages. Whereas if you say like, okay, well, I'm doing something really heavy here, I'm going to need to give 22 pages of breathing space, but I know I'm not going to be able to finish this book for however long. Then maybe you might have the idea of like, okay, well, I'm just going to go straight into trade. I'm just going to go straight into doing the photographic novel. And you're an indie creator. You can totally do that if you have the artist who's on board with that too, or multiple artists where you pay them their page rates and have them do however many pages. And then you can once that's done, you have a full graphic novel to put to market, and it's paced the way that suits the story you're telling, and without having the moment of someone being like, I just picked up issue 3 and I watched a man be depressed for 22 pages.
It must be Sandman.
Yes, it's Sandman. Or, I mean, if we get to like countering Sandman, you get to like Sandman is also interesting where that was part of the push for it. It was the emotional tell, right? But even then, when Sandman's depression, you're watching like the beginning and end of eras in his mind as he's unraveling. So it's still a whole spectacle while this is happening.
I mean, I'm fairly certain that Morpheus was bipolar, but
Oh yeah. You look at something like Messiah Complex or whatever, right? You still have like pullback moments or breather moments, but it's done in terms of like 2 pages, like usually 16, 17 or whatever. That's when you get Nightcrawler and Rogue being like, is Cyclops still a good guy?
Right.
Yeah. And so like you still get you pace to your format, and your format should serve the arc. Yeah.
See, I felt War of Kings was the same way with like the Inhumans and the Shi'ar Empire. Like, I
Yeah.
thought that had some pretty decent pacing. You know what I mean? Where you would get the all-out galactic war, but then Vulcan talking amongst the royal guard. You know what I mean? It was like, oh, do I know you? He's like, oh, like, no, you killed my predecessor. He's like, oh, right, do better then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
little bit of a downplay. You know what I mean? Where Ronan gets hurt, and you know what I mean. Him and Crystal are having just casual conversation. I mean, and then all of a sudden, epic galactic battles again.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of like looking at the rule of there must always be an exploding helicopter.
Right.
Yeah, and it doesn't need to be like in comics. It often is a literal exploding helicopter, but it doesn't always like. It needs to be like if you are, if you're writing a series that is not involve lasers and dragons and exploding robots, you need to have the emotional equivalent of exploding helicopter, and that's how you get your romance and your westerns where you have the big reveal or whatever, and lean into the melodrama for those 22 issues to feel impactful. But if you don't have that happening, if it is just 22 pages of breathing, you're starting into the issue of
Right. Listen, even if it's a medieval story, you still need exploding helicopters, just so you know. Just so you know what viewers and read and listen toers, viewers and
listen toers.
There's a word in there that's supposed to be there.
Listeners.
This is why I don't write.
Yeah. Yeah. Lost it.
You silenced the writer. He doesn't know what to say.
Man.
Yes. All hail King Jose.
Thank you, Tommy.
Great. Thank you, Tommy.
Yeah. I mean, and then Morphkin's also a long one where that was like the culmination of multiple arcs, which it's harder to do as an integrator because the resources to do an arc into an arc into an arc is kind of you may not have the ability to do that, but you can find some equivalent therein where you might be able to do here's a 3-issue mini that then builds into this 3-issue mini, and that's kind of where like if you were to pick up a modern thing now like Avengers Armageddon, it's built off a couple different things that happened in the past, but you don't necessarily need to read them to be caught up. It's you might get some additional context or clues, but you need to know why the Red Hulk is being a bad guy, or is it just the fact that it's the Red Hulk and he has a cosmic cube kind of makes sense to you?
So I got a question for you, Tim. What is your take on? Okay, say you're planning a project, and your project's going to be 12 issues.
Mm-hmm.
We'll just use a 12-issue arc, and it's a completely standalone, new character, new storyline, new everything. And you go through and you've designed it so the arc will have a beginning, an intro, storyline, finish, done. You're hitting about, issue 11, something like that, issue 10, and then all of a sudden your publisher says, you know what, we want to make this into an ongoing thing.
Mm.
So what's your thought, and how would you approach on how to take it to that level without, quite frankly, turning around and saying, yeah, well, it wasn't designed for that, and I can't take it farther without killing the original. What's your take on that? So
I mean, it was really funny because this just happened to Ghost Pepper. I don't know if it's one from, but Ghost Pepper was going to wrap at issue 12, and then they got we're renewed to 318. There's a couple of ways you can do that. The thing that you want to usually avoid in most cases, or at least if you do it, you want to do it very well, is there's always a bigger fish trope idea. Like the heroes beat the bad guy, but were they really the bad guy, or was there someone else pulling the strings behind them? The idea of, well, was the bad guy being bad to stop something even worse from happening? If you do a trope like that, you want to make sure that you're handling it in a way that like either leans into the camp or that subverts expectations, because you don't want to be lazy about it, because those are just very, at this point, very used and tired ideas. The way that I usually like to do it is to inject some way for the heroes to clutch defeat from the jaws of victory. That's the whole point of putting tension and drama in stories anyways. You want to apply the screws to the heroes that they have to find some way to overcome and things it out. So if you're already used to knowing how to tweak your hero and whatever, and you've gone through the hero's journey and you know it's going to wrap at this point, well, maybe now at page 20 of the last issue now, maybe they do something to lose the MacGuffin, or they, one of their heroes betrays them, or they realize that they've made a critical mistake and that now there is a new flaw for the hero to overcome, and it causes either the villain to win temporarily or just for plans to be set back, where maybe they stop the plan in the moment, but they no longer have the ability to seal the deal, and now you have some way to recoup or whatever. But you need to tailor it to the story and tailor it to the hero's journey or the arc you've put your heroes through, so that way it feels like it is true to the story you're telling. Because if you just do, they do all the stuff, they win and kill the bad guy, but somehow Palpatine returned. Then
no. Do not do that. What about the thing of, you have this storyline, and you have your leader, and they build, and they have the big, corrupt agency that they have to go, and they hit issue number 12, okay, and you're writing, and here's your happy ending, and then all of a sudden you put in an epilogue, and the epilogue is all of a sudden a sniper comes out and shoots your main character.
Oh yeah.
And you branch out. So you've completed that storyline to its fulfillment.
Yeah.
And then now it's like, here's a whole new direction. Where are we going to go? We have a team assembled, but the guy who's been calling the shots, the guy who's the brains of the team, is removed. So how do we continue that? So it's that type, something that you would...
That kind of deal too, yeah, where you find some way to like throw the wrench at it, where if you are wanting to create a whole new arc from that, where you're like, okay, we're going to wrap this arc for sure, then you do the classic idea of we wrap the arc on page 21, page 22 is set up, where it's actually I literally had the thought about, like, if we were to talk about this question last night, because one of my favorite moments is slightly different, where it's not a new arc, but it's expanding the arc in the way that fits, where example, Captain America, Bucky, Natasha, all the like kind of the Invader style Avengers plus the spies or whatever, distrusting S.H.I.E.L.D. for the event of 6 issues while they're tracking down Hydra compounds. They take out Iron Strucker, they get Zemo in cuffs, they take him to the Triskelion, and the thing is, Nick Fury sends them off on assignment at the end of page 21. Page 22, you have I forgot the agent's name, but turns to Baron Zemo and says, "Hail Hydra," and you see the click of his cuffs come off. And you get the Shield Hydra arc out of that. Things like, or you do something like you're saying, where you find some way to introduce a new twist or new thing that isn't necessarily like there's a bigger bad or there's a different thing, but there's the world is in motion and there's other forces moving, and something the hero done has brought them into conflict with these forces. And so if you want to take the time to build out another part of your world or another part of the people living in your world and make them give them their own history and their own depth and a reason why something the hero did in the last 12 issues would upset them or would throw their own plans into disarray. And then now they're like, okay, well, now we need to deal with this roadblock that got created for us.
Yeah, so the question is, and kind of pointing out is, I think once you've established that the way that you're working and you have your goal and your goal is there, the last thing you want to do is try and say, oh, well, they want to continue the series, being told to continue the series, so I'm going to blow the last 2 issues, and all of a sudden it becomes an unattainable goal that's been an attainable goal the whole time. So that's the reason, for the question and all that. And I kind of wanted to tailor that in that direction. So
and we've done all those things. Like there's certainly something, but the way that like where my thought process come from of like you find some way to throw the screws at your heroes is that comes from the Infinity Saga, where the goal is obtainable up to a point, and like they got a plan down, it's working great, and then the last issue, editorial comes on, and is like, "Hey guys, we got another year of this," and they're like, "Okay, Thanos has to snap," and but
the whole number 4 of a 4-issue series, number 5 of a 5-issue series.
And that's where you get the idea of, okay, well, what's the one thing that matches the storyline we've told so far that would absolutely screw the heroes in a way that forces us to continue on, but doesn't undo everything we did, and doesn't just rely on us saying, well, actually, there's a bigger bad pulling his strings. It's the idea of, okay, well, maybe the bad guy is also just as competent as the heroes, and has been planning at that point as well, and flips the dime on them and says, all right, great, my turn now. And then now you don't have to flip it where now maybe the heroes are on the defensive for the back half of that, or what have you, or you get to the whole point where now you have to introduce a whole new subset of whatever to not to help complete the storyline that has been progressed, and that also will make your villains feel like less of a paper tiger, especially if you are following the hero's journey pretty close to like the letter, where you like hit it beat for beat. People are going to expect like, okay, this is the point where the villain loses or whatever. And if you would then say like, well, actually, the villain went on their own hero's journey in this time, we just didn't see it. And their elixir happens to trump the hero's elixir. And now we need to continue on as the true hero's journey actually progresses. And then that moment of triumph that would normally in the hero's journey actually shifts down in the wheel and becomes the false death.
So in other words, you're interjecting Omni-Man into the mix, and
yeah, interjecting Omni-Man. It's the it has like, if you find like look for any books that have like gone on for a long time, you'll find an example of something like that. And the ones that do it well are the ones that like have or continue to go on. Like that's the reason why like Dresden Files is on like almost book 20. And it's because like you'll get to a moment where you have like a near completion, and then like Baron Marconi will have gone his own thing and say like, actually, Harry, I outmaneuvered you. And it's not, and you're not doing anything to cheapen all the work your hero did, because they still won in the moment, or they did their plan. But as a result of the plan happening, now they have created more work for them to do down the road.
Or you've so and so have taken the area away from the obvious villains, and we've taken it. Now we're handing it over to the council, and then the council is worse than the villains the whole time.
Yes, yeah.
So, and all of a sudden they're broken up, they're split apart, they're arrested, they're whatever, and then now you've got a whole new arc and all that. So I don't know. I just thought it would be a good source of a good source of conversation. That,
Yeah.
What would you do in cases where you were approached? Hey, you have a definitive thing, and we want to. This is selling. Why would we stop making money on it? Let's continue it. So.
Yeah, my thing is like you can find a lot of ways to make that work. Things just want to avoid is just the somehow Palpatine returns, the empty room trope where the heroes come into their own victory and there's no one in the room, or there's always a bigger fish. Like those are the ones where it usually ends up where you can still make it work. You can still sell it if you do it well, but at a point, as a readers who are like. If readers who have been fully exposed to the medium and a lot of the tropes might, if it's not done well, will like oh, all right, this is I've seen this on 50 other issues.
The other thing is you don't want to destroy the pacing that you have too. You don't want to just you had an idea for 12 issues and it's just not panning out. So I'm pretty good up to issue 11, but I committed to 12, so let's stretch 11 out to 12. Yeah. So
no pacing, just pandemonium.
I mean, that's also where you get into the another idea of the that was something you can do, which falls into the hero's plan goes awry and now things fall awry. This is the opposite of stretching out an issue is you compress an event. It's called something not PC in the in terms of tropes. It's the cluster F. They can also call it the catastrophe, where the idea of like something goes so horribly wrong that now you have created a war zone that's developing at a rapid pace, and the hero's objectives have to switch from dealing with whatever to triaging the events on the ground. And so this happens a lot in like a standard false death book or event in like a novel series or whatever, where like the hero has a plan, they're going to do something terrible happens, and now they need to go save their friends. And you just take that event that would normally happen like in part of the hero's journey anyway at some point, and if you haven't already used it, that makes a very natural place for you to input it, where your heroes have put like the Avengers have got the plan put together, they're doing everything, they're about ready to siege Doom's castle. And then all of a sudden, something's doing terribly wrong with Sentry, and he ends up taking out half the new Avengers, and they have to figure out what's happening and deal with that.
Well, a good thing on that, I think, is when you look at the Watchmen, at the end, it's like, Rorschach is pushing to do the right thing, and I have to do this, and then all of a sudden the team realized that they had to do the bad thing. The bad thing had to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's Rorschach. He has to do the bad thing, right? It didn't matter if it was like, what, we're gonna go ahead and just let this go. It's Rorschach.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I'm saying. Mm-hmm. Rorschach is a canon event in and of himself.
Speaking of arcs and miniseries, though, is anyone else reading through Corpse Knight?
I've read issue 1.
Yeah. That's a really good series, a really good mini, and it kind of hits the example of we have an ongoing arc of we need to get this guy to Joan of Arc. However, each issue is a new roadblock that we have to overcome to progress forward. So it's that idea of episodic storytelling with an overarching arc behind it, where issue 1 is the first act. It sets up everything where father dies. The girl heard stories about how women of faith could pray so much that someone would come back to life. Does so. Her dad comes back as a corpse knight. And then you're like, okay, well, you can't undo the curse. You just have to get to Joan of Arc, because you need someone who is a incorruptible, and she's the currently only living incorruptible. That I believe that's actually accurate to Catholic canon too, that she was only living uncorruptible at that time. Saint, canonized saint, who became an uncorruptible and she died when her bones are preserved. The only reason I know about that is because there's a stage play called The Uncorruptible, which is about a priest making fake bones. But and then issue 2 is doing this, and there's an ambush, and he has to fight. Blah blah. They get separated. Issue 3 is okay. They're lost. How do they get out of this plane? Blah blah blah. So it's the same idea where it's if you were to pick up one issue, it'd be its own story pretty much. But it's, still tied into this ongoing saga or this ongoing arc if you wanted to collect all 5.
It's very Supernatural-esque where, you had the recurring theme, but yet you had each episode was its own little mini story.
Exactly, yeah. It's kind of the takeaway, I think, is writing an arc is there's different ways to write an arc, and it's just whatever way best suits your story, and then that will also influence how you choose to format your medium, whether doing it as floppies or as a trade or what have you.
What kind of arc is Soul Ascendant considered, in your opinion?
Soul Ascendant is I tried to make it episodic, where there is an ongoing thing where if you read issues 1 through 6, it's one complete thing. You have the fight with Orcus, it's this whole blah. But if you're to just pick up issue 1, it's the fight on Terra. If you're just pick up issue 2, it's the fight with Ex Nihilo. If you're just pick up issue 3, it's the fight on Juno. So it's the idea like if at any point you wanted to jump in, you could. And I'm going to wrap up whatever conflict is happening by the end. But we're going to say like, okay, well, here's the next step, and that's what gets put on the last panel of page 22 is whatever the next step is going to be.
And so as we're turning around, if we say that issue 1 sells out, issue 2 sells out, somebody they can jump in on issue 3. Pretty straightforward, easy to pick up and move on.
Yeah, okay. But whereas like Wolf Hunter is very serialized because it's just 3 issues. Like this is just the spy drama of this one event. So, just getting to issue 2 or 3 of Wolf Hunter might be a little confusing because they're like, what's that? Who? Why? With Soul Ascendant, you can jump in at any point, and then also with that, you also have to understand like the other tropes of comic writing. That once you get used to them, you get annoyed when you don't see them. Of what makes good episodic comic writing which is the thing of if you're not going to put a little explainer page on your interior cover that has the headshots of your characters and their names and the 2 paragraphs that say how he got here, you need to have fairly frequently in the first pages, but almost like at least once a page, if there's conversation happening, someone needs to use someone's name.
Right. The recap page.
Yeah, if you're not having a recap page, then you need to have a reference text somewhere that says like, okay, well you did this, so now I have to do this, blah. And you can do this unobtrusively too. You can do it in one line of text, right? And that happens, and that was really standard. And it's still like considered very good writing because it's the okay. If this is if Fantastic Four 42 was someone's first comic, they're not going to know like the stuff that happened with Mole Man and the sewer monster beforehand. But if we have a moment where Sue says, "Well, Reed, because you shrunk Ben, now we have to go into this thing and grab him," and like, okay, great, we just summarize the last issue, and you know who Reed is.
3 sentences. 3 sentences is all you get to summarize the issue before.
Yeah, and that's when you're used to that. When we get into comics, where like if you're picking up like an event or something for the first time, and 22 pages have passed and no one has said anyone's name, like I have no idea who any of these characters are. I have no reason to know why they care about each other, why they care about the events happening here. And you don't want to over exposit, but you shouldn't have an aversion to exposition because exposition is a fundamental of storytelling.
Right. I mean, you don't need 3 pages, you know what I mean, to explain what happened in the issue before. Like I said, 3 lines. That's all.
Yeah.
Three
And you got to remember that not every book is, people can pick up and say, well, I don't care if you use his name. I know who Ben Grimm, who the Thing is, who
Right.
Visible Woman is, who Spider-Man is. But you got to also remember that, unless you're writing one of those type of books, you also got to remember that, it's, if it's a Marvel or a DC book, it's, been, 30 days or so. And a lot of things going in people's lives, and a lot of them are reading a lot of different books. So a lot of the characters do kind of mesh, and particularly on the indie scene, it could be months and months
Yeah.
till the next issue comes out. So that is something that's definitely more key, is that you bring that kind of refresher, even if you had, some kind of reference, that your traditional, so and so back in issue number 14, this, or pick up 14 to see what happens on this, or what, you have that kind of callback to, that
Right.
this has happened and this is building off an event that happened before.
Yeah.
So
Or even just something to explain why the character's state is, like, if you have 4 pages at the front and you see a character being mopey, you're like, okay, sure, he's doing something. But if you have something that says, I can't believe I killed all those people, we're like, okay, great, I know he did something terrible and I know why he's mopey. We can go from there.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, didn't Marvel do? They used to do a little caption, right? Like, oh, back in issue, blah blah blah, and then Silverline would put it on the bottom. You know what I mean? The bottom of the page. Like, you didn't read, Divinity? Go back to this issue. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. At the bottom, like, they'll lose a caption. Different places will put it in different locations or whatever. But it's always that idea of, like, DC's always like, as seen in Batman number 9 or whatever. Whereas Marvel's like, want to know why Iron Man is in this way? Catch it out. And
well, I know Roland used to go through and he used to make comments on Silverline stuff. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this has been That's Run Show on Tuesday, talking about writing comic arcs. Let me grab our topic for next week.
You did very well since with Ron leaving. Show about writing, you did pretty well. We're just Jose and I are just the sideshows to your.
I said we're here to look pretty.
Main stage.
Right, Dave. We're here to look pretty.
Yeah, this is my best view right here.
That's right.
All right. Next one is gonna be subjective talk, and it's just gonna be, we get to nerd out. It's gonna be us talking about our favorite arcs in comic books.
I mean,
so yeah, and so we'll be breaking down about why we think they work, what was so good about them, and it isn't just a storytelling. Like, one of my favorite arcs is Dark Vortex, Dark Portal, and one of the reasons why is because of the different styles of art that get featured throughout it. So yeah, we'll be talking about all that. But make sure to check out Wednesday Wham and Silver Sunday on their respective days and times. Check out the rest of the Madness Comics Network on the Roku. And
yeah, we've got check out CC and Rob Davis tomorrow.
Yes.
Amazing creators, and then Tommy and the Sunday team always have some very interesting different conversations all across the board. So definitely check those out.
Okay, but until that time,
make mine
Silverline.
Hi, I'm Chris Olm. I'm the former editor-in-chief of Malibu Comics. Make mine Silverline.